Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV. Tell us where you're watching from. You know the drill. I'm broadcasting to you from Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains in my office at Drum Talk TV. And our guest today, I'm very excited about this because it's something a little bit different, not just for us, but for music fans. If you know about the Hit Like a Girl contest, they have a new category called Beats. And Kallee Bernish-Good is the champion of the 18 and under category. For the Beats category, she's coming to us from Columbus, Ohio. How are you, Kallee?
I'm good. How are you? It's great here in Columbus, Ohio. Fall's setting in.
Yeah, that's true. It is fall. We're a few days into it. Can you believe that?
I cannot.
I'm putting stuff on my calendar for November, and it's like, where did the year go? I
I know the
can't believe
time.
it. Yeah, I'm still recovering from the NAMM show back in January. So, folks, tell us where you're watching from. I'm going to refresh my screen over here so I can see people's comments and if anybody has questions. But the first thing we want to do and talk about, well, the first thing we want to do is thank David Levine for the Hit Like a Girl contest for all these years. Since the first week of Drum Talk TV in January of 2013, I've been a huge advocate for female drummers, and it's great that David does this contest every year with a lot of other sponsors and partners to really bring more attention and create more opportunity for women and young ladies who play drums and percussion. And now there's a new category that you were part of called Beats. Tell us first about the category, and then we're going to play
Okay,
a video of Kallee's music.
sounds good. So, I guess I was informed by my audio production instructor. I take a career center. I'm in high school. And he was like, hey, check this out. This is super cool. It's this new opportunity, beat making, when normally, like, this was a drum contest solely. But he was like, check this out. I think it's cool. And I was researching it, and basically there's an over 18 category, an under 18 category, and then it's all about production, beat making, electronic production. So basically using a MIDI controller or something like that, and then any sort of like DAW or digital audio workspace you have, and setting up, like, composing a beat and entering it in this contest. And I saw it and immediately was like, I gotta do this.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. Well, before we show Kallee's video that she made especially for this, which is great, I appreciate you putting all that work into it. I have a little confession for everybody. Like, when I heard Beats, I did not expect what it ended up being. It's much more musical and much more composition oriented and production minded than what I expected. For some reason, when David told me about it and I heard Beats, I literally expected like a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I expected stuff like that, and it's nothing like that, thank goodness. But
Right.
let's play this piece, and then we're going to talk about it. Check this out, folks. Very cool. That's beautiful. And folks, I'm still refreshing my screen over here, but I'll get to comments. But first, let's talk about, before we talk about the composition and your influences and actually the journey through the competition, tell us about the gear that you're using. What did you use to record and compose and MIDI-wise, and tell us where the sounds are coming from and everything. It looks like you had an Akai, but I don't know the model.
Yes, so I used an Akai MPK Mini MIDI controller, and I actually got it like quite a few years ago, so it is not the newest generation. And it was kind of actually the first MIDI controller I used when I started getting into this kind of stuff. But I used that and that alone for my MIDI controller. And then I recorded with just an Audio-Technica AT2020 microphone. And then I actually, for this song, it's pretty old. I started messing around with it, I would say, about freshman year, so 2 years ago. And at that time, I had only used GarageBand for my DAW, my digital audio workspace. And so I kept it on GarageBand, and I kept working with it in GarageBand. So this entire piece actually was made in GarageBand, and then I mastered it through Pro Tools.
Oh, wow. Very cool. What do you like most about that process? Is it the composing? Is it the performing the tracks to record, or is it the mastering, mixing? What do you like most about the whole overall process?
I think the overall process, what I enjoy the most is the arrangement and the composition of it all. Mm-hmm. And then I guess on top of that, like performing it and making things like fit in, and if sometimes improvisation turns into something more solidified, and then you turn that into a track. And I think something like that can be daunting, but I find like so satisfying is editing everything and getting it all to fit and like making cool things happen.
That's like a whole other layer of the creativity. There's the composing and picking your sounds and recording, but then what you just said, that whole post-production process is like a whole other way to be creative.
Yeah, and then you add in like automation and adding in like fades and panning and all that stuff, and basically you end up with this like finished product, and you're like, what? Like I did that? It's just this
great.
this feeling you accomplished something. So
yeah, and for newer people that are jumping on the interview, I also want to I'll play that piece again so you folks will get a chance to see it, so that there's also context to the answer to my next question for Kallee, which is, who are your musical influences?
Okay, that is a very added question.
Sorry. The monitor started talking to me. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would say, I think my influences really just come from who I listen to on a daily basis. And I have this like wall of posters behind me. Those are like my favorites. But I think I started really getting into production at the beginning of like my high school career, just as I started to get a little bit older. I've always been a musician. Started playing cello in the 4th grade, which I'm classically trained in that. And so music had always been a thing, but production kind of like showed up in my life when I was like 13 or 14. And so then I like delved into this world of like electronic music and bedroom pop, like self-produced stuff. And so Still Woozy is one of my favorite producers. He doesn't have that many songs out. He kind of like transitioned into his solo career, and he goes by Still Woozy, and he produces everything, performs everything, and he kind of has this bedroom like indie like funk pop sound. And I really just like how he incorporates acoustic instruments with like electronic drums or like stylistic things that are normally in like electronic music. And I've always listened to Frank Ocean, so some neo soul, Mac Miller, Flume, and I think this song, you don't like. It's hard to hear the inspirations in this song, and I think it's interesting just because I'm like such a young producer, like. I have so many drafts that aren't public that probably show more of my influence because I kind of like release the stuff that I'm able to do. And sometimes like your like actual like function, like your capabilities don't match like what you're imagining in your brain. And so it's fun
that's me every day, just so you know.
Right. So I kind of like, I've published what I've been able to accomplish, and I'm like also trying to accomplish things like every day, trying to get new sounds, trying to incorporate those like neo soul drum sounds, kind of like funkier, rather than just like quantized, because that's easier when you're starting, you know?
Yeah, you want your stuff to have feel. You
Right,
want the
exactly.
performance to come through the music rather than it just sounding. And there's a place for stuff that's quantized and sounds programmed and even
Yeah, yeah.
robotic, but that's not you. That's not your style. And I could tell
Right.
just from that one piece with that all the ambience and the flow. Yet there is a beat, and
Right.
the production is beautiful. It's a nice wide open sound. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Regarding influences coming through music, and I'd be curious how our audience feels about this and how you feel about it. I find just as much value in being able to hear and or see someone perform and say, "Oh, I hear so and so. That's got to be one of her influences." Or
Right.
sometimes it's real obvious, and then I also have just as much praise and value for when I can't tell who their influence is, or you think you recognize it, but then you ask more questions and you find out their influencers are completely 180 from what comes
Right.
out of them that you stereotyped them as. To me, I think that's fun to discover that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get that, like comparing different artists when like sometimes the artist kind of just boggles your mind and you're like, where are they getting this from? And then there's
Yeah.
other artists where you're like, I hear all these bands like behind them. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that, and then you could break that down to each instrument. The bass
Right,
player had to
right.
be influenced by these people, and the singer by
Totally.
this person. And you mentioned at the beginning of influences question that you're influenced by people you listen to every day. Is it that each day do you bounce around to different influences, or do you listen to like one or two people for like 4 weeks and then now you're into something else? Or what's your influential process like?
That's such a good question because I would say I do both
Hmm.
somewhat simultaneously. So I'll fall into like rabbit holes and I'll listen to one artist and listen to all of their albums over a certain stretch of time, like every day, and like simultaneously maintaining like my like the fundamental things that I listen to all the time. Like you have like your greatest hits, kind of like your
The
favorite.
go-to easy
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have all these like interesting new weirder artists that like kind of you fall into this like spiral of like listening. Most recently, I just discovered like the French producer Onra.
Hmm.
And he's got these like three like albums from like early 2000s, and I've just been listening to those straight for like the past couple of
Oh,
days.
wow.
And I would
Interesting.
say, honestly, so he works with a lot of old vinyl and looping old vinyl,
Oh, wow.
and kind of turning it into like these like hip hop beats. And he's made me like experiment with like looping more. So
Oh,
I think
that's cool.
totally it sways depending on like what zone I'm in. If I'm in a spiral with a new artist, then I'm totally gonna be like more into like trying to do stuff similar to that, right?
Right. Oh, that's
But then
cool.
there's always the greats.
Yeah. And here's a question from one of our viewers, Mike Skinner in Wales, is asking if, and this kind of goes to our question, like, he hears an influence in you, but
Okay.
is asking if this influence is on you, if that makes
Right,
sense.
right.
Is Moby one of your influences?
I love Moby.
Oh,
Oh my
there you
gosh.
go.
I can't believe that. Oh my
Good
that's
call,
such a
Mike.
great just mentioning Moby in the same like sentence around me is a compliment. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
amazing. I
That's
really,
really
really love
cool.
Moby. And actually, some of like my first memories of listening to like to music when I was like kind of growing up. There's like I feel like there's this like transition period where it's like you're like a 4-year-old and you don't really like you love the music, you don't really know what's
Right.
going on, and then slowly but surely you start to listen more and you're getting into it, right? Like as you get older.
Yeah.
And my mom would play Moby in the car a lot, actually. And
Wow.
I would get so into it. I feel like I was driving home from like soccer practice or something, and I would just I would love it. So I love that somebody like heard that in my
Yeah.
music.
Oh, that's really neat. That's cool. So let's talk about the contest. You mentioned how you found out about it through your teacher in your production class, right? And
Yes.
and then what made you decide to enter, and what made you decide on what to enter with,
Right.
and have
Um
that all like how'd you get from one step to the next to the next? Because that's kind of how it is. You got to work your way up.
Right. So, yeah, first step, I just was made aware about it from my teacher. And then I was looking into Hit Like a Girl and just watching all the videos. And I was just like, this is the best thing ever. I didn't know, like, I had no idea it was off my radar. And my audio production program is affiliated with Berklee. It's a City Music Network site. And I know that Beats by Girls is affiliated with Berklee. And that's kind of like Beats by Girls and Hit Like a Girl teamed up for this beat making competition. Right. And I am a founding member of the Columbus chapter of Beats by Girls. So instantly I was like, oh, Beats by Girls, like, I love this, because the disparity between men and women in production specifically is crazy. Like, there's just not enough girls or women in the field who totally have the talent and the capabilities, right? And so I've always been passionate about that. And being a member of Beats by Girls, I saw that. I saw all the amazing videos of like older women and younger girls, like, just absolutely crushing it. Wow. And I was like, I gotta do this. So I decided, I was like very enthusiastically like, I'm going to enter this competition. And it was a little daunting because it's a competition. Yeah. But I basically decided on the song that I entered because I recently had like gone back in and worked on it with what I had learned from my audio production class. It's interesting to go back on old drafts that like you started when you didn't really know what was going on, and like we're experimenting.
But now you're applying what you learned, which is what it's all about.
And then you kind of like you make fun of your past self for doing something, like maybe it was like a weird EQ curve or whatever, but I had just, like, before I had found out about the contest, had gone back in and started messing around. And I kind of added, like, all of the vocal layers that you hear. Like, before I had messed with it, it was just, like, one vocal, like, maybe, like, 5 tracks or something.
Oh, wow.
And so I went back in after I had, like, learned a bunch and added a bunch of, like, harmonies and background vocals and more tracks. And so I was really excited about this project that I was working on. And I was like, you know what, I'll do this one. I'll submit this. And so I trimmed
totally blossomed through that process. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And actually the competition, like, was why, like, the song grew more, because then I had, like, gone in and I just wanted it to be my best, so I edited, I was messing with it more, and it grew into what it is because of the contest. And so, yeah, the overall experience was just phenomenal. And I learned through making the song that I was making for the competition. Like, I learned new things through that too, and it was great.
That's awesome. And when you first decided, okay, I've got to do this, did you have an attitude, I'm going to win, I've got this? Or was it like, I'm going to do this for the experience? Or what were your expectations in the beginning, and did any of that change along the way as you got higher up in the rankings and everything? Right.
I would say when I entered, I was like, well, obviously I'm not going to win, but this is good, like, just to do. Like, it was kind of like, I might as well, right? Like, I actually vividly remember being like, trying to set my expectations up for, like, well, I'm not even going to get close to winning, but I might as well shoot my shot, like, just go for it. And my teacher was like, yeah, it's good for the experience, you know, and like, and my mom, being super biased, was like, no, I think, like, you can do this. And I was like, I don't know, like, we'll see. There's a lot of talented, amazing producers out there. And so I entered trying to keep my expectations super low, and I think throughout the process, it was actually really, really nice in a time of, like, awfulness, because this was like very early stages of the pandemic, like April-ish time. And basically through the process of trying to, like, push this song out, like, get as many, like, plays and get as many listens as possible, I felt, like, so embraced by the people around me. And it was like this really beautiful moment where, like, I had, like, like teachers and like adults and like my friends trying to like promote this awesome contest, and by promoting my song they were also promoting all of these young producers and the whole site as itself, like the drummers too and everything, and trafficking like all these eyes on this awesome thing, right? And so I think as the process went on, I was like, you know what, like maybe we've got something here. I started to get more and more excited. So
well, what's neat is that even by you wanting to stay grounded and have, you know, let's just call them realistic expectations, to not just assume you're going to win, but even by setting those expectations low, you still use this experience to push you and do something with an older draft that you probably never would have gotten to, and you probably applied some things that, who knows, maybe they would have taken another year or 3 before you got to layering the vocals and everything like that. So that speaks volumes for the process. For those who are jumping on that missed the track in the beginning, I'm going to play the video again, and check this out. This is very impressive. It's beautiful, actually.
Thank you.
Sure. There it goes. Oh, there it goes. Yay, that was great. Very cool. So let's go way back and talk about your influences a little bit. You mentioned that you started on cello in 4th grade?
I did, yes. That was the first time I had like really picked up. I had messed around with guitar when I was littler, but I had like a couple lessons, but this was like, I got really excited, and I was like, I was going to be an orchestra, and like all my friends were doing something too. And then I got really into cello, and that's probably what sparked like my interest in being a musician in general.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Are your parents musicians?
So my mom is a writer. Like that's kind of her artistic, like that's where all of her artistic expression goes. And she's always been like a poet and a writer, and is always like a wordsmith, like that's her thing. Right. But she's never actually, you know, played an instrument like to a really high level. Right. Like she's messed around and she dabbles in guitar. Right. But, all my parents actually are not like, they're not like musicians. They dabble and they all love music, right? Yeah. Like that's I've grown up around music. Just that alone was one of the reasons why I think I got so into it, because my mom and everybody around me has always had such like an immense respect and love for artists and music, right? And I feel like the range of things I listened to as a kid, it was like Ray Charles to like ABBA to like Bach.
Oh,
like
wow.
Literally just like the entire spectrum. And that alone, I think, made me fall in love with music in general.
That's really cool. So you're a senior in high school.
Yes.
No, you're a senior in Zoom school.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do after that? Do you want to pursue music as your career, or is it just something that you do for the love of it? What would you like to do?
I absolutely positively want to become a professional music producer, and that can mean like a bunch of things. Like that doesn't need to be just like making music for somebody in a studio, like whether it be sound design or like soundtracking for movies, or even just doing like audio work for movies or live sound, the whole range of things, right? My dream right now is to live in music, just no matter what that may be. And I'm actually completing my application for Berklee College of Music right now.
I heard that that's really easy to do too.
It can be, depending on like how hard you go, like but it's been, because I care so much about it, it's been pretty stressful, but in a good way. It's like exciting. But yeah, so Berklee is an option, and then I'm just looking at a bunch of music schools in general. So I do want to go to college. I will say the pandemic makes things kind of weird, because online music school is so much different than in-person music school. Like, I feel like half of the music school is networking, and if you're like Zooming, you don't really get to like shake hands with anybody. So
it's got to be a whole different thing.
It really is, yeah. But the plan as of now is to live and breathe music after high school.
That's awesome. That's what I did, and it was very, very fulfilling. Yeah, that's really cool. How can people follow you? Do you have a website yet or anything like that?
Well, I have my SoundCloud, which is what I like posted the track and entered the track with. My SoundCloud is Saturday Sonder. And I just released a bunch of demos, but yeah.
I can put that in the comments real quick.
Sweet, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that my SoundCloud is basically like, there's songs on there, or like kind of like loop compositions on there from like the beginning of like me just like playing GarageBand on my phone. So it's interesting to see like the journey of things.
Yeah,
like
they can follow your arc of development. Right. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then my Instagram is the same handle.
Okay, cool.
But other than that, I'm not really social media savvy, and I'm definitely gonna have to get on that.
Yeah, you've got to get my books then. I'll send you a link.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a series of bite-sized, really easy to, I mean, there's only that much, but very valuable, from the guy who built a following of over 1 million people without ever spending money on ads or boosting posts. I got a few of these.
Totally.
Yeah, I'll say, if you have Kindle Unlimited, they're free on Kindle Unlimited.
Good to know. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I'll send you a link, but no, that's very good that you know that, and that you know you need to go in that direction, because that's just how the world works now. It's all on the outer web, or the internet, or whatever.
And honestly, I will say the competition kind of like gave me some networking / promotion skills. Just having to, like, I was just consistently being like, hey, go check this out, right, on all of my social media platforms. And so that was a pretty good skill that I learned from this too, I would say. That's super needed. That's necessary.
Good. And Kallee, I want to make sure I'm spelling this correctly. It's Saturday. Is it SAUNDR? Or SAN?
It's SONDER.
Oh, I was way off. You could tell I didn't go to college.
You had it phonetically.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And Instagram. I'm putting that so everyone can follow you. So I have now, for the last question, let me just, there we go. So my last question is the Kallee Bernish-Good fun fact question, which would be, when you're not in school, when you're not doing anything musically related, what else do you like to do?
That is an awesome question. I recently have been biking like crazy. I love my bike. I love to go on a good bike ride.
Wow.
I also love playing video games. Like, I haven't played anything super new recently, but I was playing, like, most recently Red Dead Redemption, getting my like cowboy game on.
Nice.
And then I would say something pretty consistent in my life. I've always loved movies and any sort of like like storytelling in general, so like books and movies. And so I love to watch a good movie. I love like.
What's your favorite genres?
Good question. I would say I definitely lean towards. Well, I love a good thriller sometimes. I love a good mystery or thriller, but I think my favorites are always kind of like drama, but like dramedy, kind of like a combo of like comedy, drama, like normally something like, I don't know, something just like the human experience rather than anything like sci-fi or like crazy, but I do love that too.
Yeah.
It just depends
That's
on the mood.
cool. And you mentioned that your mother's a writer. Does she write fiction?
Well, she basically she writes mostly, I would say, for pleasure, and I think she would love for it to be like her career, but she is like in the process of like writing like novels, and I think they definitely lie more towards autobiographical, but she's always been like a poet, and
cool.
and she shares my love for movies. That's why I love movies. We watch movies together. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
My son Stephen is an author. He writes. I may have the order wrong, but his genre is horror, fantasy, comedy, fiction.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot like Dean Koontz, that sort of style. Even though that's not really one of his influences. So just like in music, you know, like I started reading this, I'm like, wow, this is just like Dean Koontz. Yeah, Dean isn't one of mine. I'm like, really? He likes him, but he's not really been an influence.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I didn't know, you know, I don't know you well enough, so I didn't know if this would discombobulate you if I told you this, but your mother's been watching the whole time.
Yes, no, she absolutely has. I was very much so prepared for that.
Oh, good.
I'm sure she's laughing downstairs.
That's hilarious
right now.
Cool. Well, your story is great. Your music is beautiful, and you're welcome. And I really appreciate you sharing the story of the journey, all the way from finding out about the Hit Like a Girl contest through the whole process and winning it, and what you want to do next, and what your background is. We'll stay in touch. Keep us posted. Keep me posted with what you're doing, and we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining Kallee and myself here on Drum Talk TV. She's the 18 and under beats category for the Hit Like a Girl contest. First year, 2020, that they've done that, thanks to David Levine adding more and more things. There's some new stuff coming up as well with Hit Like a Girl, marching and bugle drum corps. I saw a graphic very briefly that was sent to me, and one of my favorites, and Enja and I, my wife Enja and I, joke about Emmanuel Caplet is one of our adopted kids, and she's one of the judges, and she's a phenomenal drummer who didn't even sit at a drum set until she was in college, but she was in drum and bugle corps since she was 9 years old. So there's a lot of wonderful things that come out of this contest as far as who the judges are, and just getting to know them and their influences, and then young artists like yourselves, and older artists. You know, the woman who won, Sheila Klotz, who won the category, I think is 50 and over category for drum set. You know, so it's all ages, girls, women. It's great. It's really a neat thing.
It is amazing. Yeah.
Cool. Hang on the line with me after I disconnect. Say goodbye to the audience. And again, folks, thanks so much. Share this with other parents who you might know are looking for ways to encourage their kids to get involved with music, or share it with other youngsters who want to get into music, because that's, I think, what this interview was really good for. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.